Hello, I've just finished reading through Sue Laflin-Barker's Start Ancient Wargaming using DBA 3.0, edited by John Curry. Bit of a long title, but very enjoyable and interesting book. Some reminiscences in there, some friendly starts, and an interesting introduction into the hobby, and one I'd fully recommend having a read of. For those not familiar, DBA 3.0, name suggests, the third version of DBA. The history was explained in the book. It comes to the old WRG days, War Games Research Group, back in 1969. Then in 1975, one of the first guides to ancient war games was written by Phil Barker, who was Sue's husband, and that was written in 1975. And then the first version of DBA came out in 1989, and it's a way of playing ancient wargaming. I'll talk a little bit more about it, but this is not a guide to the game itself, more a guide to this book and what you can learn from it. And that was in 1989, and it's been a continuous play ever since. I know lots of people who, for them, that is ancient wargaming. It's not something I've played a lot myself, and actually I think this book might help me want to play it more often. So something about Sue. She's been a contributor since the beginning on the WRG. As it says there, it's her first solo authorship wargaming book. I know she's contributed greatly to Phil Barker's books in their previous books, and obviously with the DBA rules. And you can find out more about Sue in the book as well. There's their description of DBA and the book itself. This comes at the end of the book, but I thought it was interesting to put it at the start. Not me too many pages of text in this presentation. It's mostly pictures, just something here to give you an idea for those who don't know much about it. This gives the full rules of DBA are in this book. So if you buy this book, you do not need to buy DBA as well, although there are more army lists in the DBA book. This book does also, I'm just double checking in front of me, cover the larger versions of the game, like playing DBM and giant games, whatever they call them, so you can grow the game all within this book. So it is really good value. The only real difference I can see with the DBA rules is the extra army lists that you would get with that. Here's a quick run through the contents. As you can see there, the history of DBA, how the game's been played in the past, some types of figures, which is great. It's got loads of stuff about the old Airfix 172nd, which I'm a massive fan of, and loads of armies I've been collecting for donkey's years in those, particularly Napoleonics rather than Ancients. But there's also something on choosing your armies, preparing your armies. It's great. It's some real old school advice as well there about how to paint plastic soldiers, that kind of thing. And obviously painting the armies, basing your army, very practical guide, especially if you're new to the hobby. Some low cost ways of doing this, along with the quick and easy terrain making. Real old school stuff, going from cutting up carpet tiles to polystyrene tiles. Buying on the internet's also covered. It's a very nice conversational tone. It's very enjoyable to read, and does make you feel welcome into the hobby, and sort of gets rid of some of the daunting side of it, which might put some people off. Chapter 4 is playing a game, which is a playthrough step by step. It's a battle between some Romans and Germans, and I found this the most helpful part of the game. I've played the odd game of DBA without really understanding it too well, and I've watched a few games, and I've got friends who are always trying to convince me why it's such a great game. I've never really got it, I have to be honest. This introduction game did give me a really good flavour and explain how the game works, so I'd recommend that. I'll just brighten up the page a bit with a few pictures of, because I've painted loads of DBA armies over the years, mostly for other people of course. Here's an example. This would be a Mycenaean army. It just gives an example there. The basing, this is 15mm, so all the bases are 40mm wide. The depth only really changes according to the troop type. If you can see at the back, the chariots are on a 40x40. Now with DBA, just give a couple of things about the game, because that's the next part of the book, is the full DBA rules, which I've read through again. A slightly different style there. They're very precise rules and detailed, and I've stood up to 26 years of play testing and tournament play by some very clever people, so they are well worth trying. Usually a DBA army, well, DBA army always is 12 bases. This one's a little bit bigger, one of the people I like to paint armies for plays DBM. It's like a larger version. We get up to 24 bases. And another thing I want to mention is that DBA also has rules sets for other periods, such as Renaissance. And I think there's a Napoleonic version. I know there is. I played it. There's Napoleonics as well. So there's an example of Renaissance army there. 15 mil, as you can see, the bases are the same size. It's the same kind of format of the Ancients game. And there's also something called HOTT, which is Hordes of the Things, which is a DBA variant, which covers all sorts of, well, this is Barsoom. For those who remember the John Carver stories, before Disney messed it up. That was a shame. I digress. And in there you've got rules for flyers and monsters and all that kind of stuff. So those things aren't in this book. This is just a DBA book. I'm just giving you an idea how over the years DBA has grown into this format, which is very flexible, covers a lot of areas, and is a very playable system. Games are also quite quick. This is quite important for tournaments. Games usually less than an hour. So some tournaments play 6 games in a day, stuff like that. And they are popular, they're still running. And I'm hoping this book will get more young people and new players into DBA, because there is a sort of an aging demographic with those who've been through the whole process from the 80s. And I'm hoping this will be a chance to get more people into this period. I know I'm certainly going to give it a go. This book has encouraged me. And then a big thing you get with DBA, so there's a little summary there about the rules. There's some things I was telling them. DBA is a simple, quick play game, 12 bases. Some of the extra details you might not get, but they're not strategically important for playing this. Now, one of the great things about DBA that makes it very popular is the amount of army lists you get with it. And I run through some of them in this book. I say I'm not an expert player, so I'm not going to comment on which one's better or worse or anything. But because they're 12 elements, the format's quite simple. There's not an awful lot of choice. The emphasis of this game is not poring over army lists. You play an army, you pretty much get the one out of the box. There are a number of different troop types, such as knights or light infantry, heavy infantry, and the whole ethos of this game, the whole philosophy, it's the effectiveness of the units, not specifics. Doesn't matter how many's in a unit, doesn't particularly matter what weapons they have, they're categorized. So a Roman would count as a blade. Blade's really good at killing certain things. And then you've got knights, which can charge through some units, obviously do worse against other units, light troops. And I'm told by those who play it, there is a balance. There are some units a bit better than others. Some are very powerful. But overall, the game is balanced. And it's 26 years of play testing. And obviously, it works best if you match the armies up historically. So I go through some of the lists that you get, just to give you an idea. This one book goes all the way back to almost 2800 BC, and it gives you loads of options. And this is just in this book. This book gives 50 armies. It says in the introduction of the book that you get 10 times that many in the DBA rules, so about 500 armies. Now that is a lot. I think that was I don't know how many there are. There are an awful lot though, and they're very easy to use, and they're really well researched. I can only imagine the amount of work that's gone into these. So with these book, as you can see there, some early sort of chariot type armies, ancient armies. And then we run through all over the world, so you can see some Chinese armies. They're roughly chronological. If you mix up armies from the same period, especially the same theatre, you'll get a reasonable game that way. Just to give you an idea, more armies, more armies. Romans, there's loads of Romans and their enemies throughout the various ages. It's a big area of interest to me. And I do want to try these out, I have to say. And I think it's great that you get all these army lists without having to buy book after book after book, which a lot of companies do. And in fairness, you can't really accuse them of being greedy. It's been 3 versions in 26 years. That's pretty good value. I know the first 2 versions of DBA were very low cost production value, should we say. And the one thing I would say about this book, I think a lot of people were hoping to see some colour pictures, maybe a more modern look. It is a very retro feel to the book. Font, black and white pictures. I'm looking through quickly in front of me. Yeah, there's no colour pictures in the book at all. The figures are a bit old-fashioned. I think some of us were hoping for a more of a refresher. Whereas the rules have been updated. There's not many changes, but a couple of things have been tweaked just to stop some of the gamey things happening and just to balance things out. But generally, it's the same game. Here we go. There's a few more armies. What's interesting as well in this is some armies I noticed for things like Maori armies and Central American armies, stuff you might not play very often, and I think it'd be interesting to try them. Yeah, as you see as we work down the list, you can see Ottomans, Samurai, quite a mix, Albanian army, and this goes right up to 1487, which by my maths makes the book cover about 4,200 years, roughly, of human history around the world, so it's a heck of a lot of choice. If you do need more armies than that, then get the full DBA book, but unless you're a serious tournament player, or you're really looking for something specific, I'd have thought that would be enough to keep anyone going for quite a long time. It's a good selection as well. Nice variety. Here's an example of what an army list looks like. As you can see, it's quite simple. You have to get to know the code, which is very easy. So at the top there, you can see Mongol Conquest Army. I've just picked a random one. 1 times General, which is cavalry. And you've got 2 lots of Mongol Armoured Cavalry or Horse Archers. There's a little bit of choice, but not a great deal. Then 5 lots of Horse Archers, 1 lots of Horse Archers, blah blah blah. There's your list, and a few choices of your sort of auxiliary type troops. There are rules for incorporating allies as well. It's usually just the odd unit. It's not a major part of the game. So the game is all about the play and getting the right matchups. There's a bit of luck involved with the dice, but it's more about manoeuvring, getting the right matchups, and dealing with the limited control factors. You roll pips each turn, you roll the dice. That controls how many things you can do. Like I said, I'll do another review on DBA. There are other reviews out there. Saw one recently, it's very good. I'll try and put a link on there. The point of this is the book and what it gives you quite a lot. And you also see then a bit of historical information. Now, one of the features which I do like about the book, I hope you can see that picture okay, and it's a kind of selection of army lists. This is the contests or conflicts. Sorry, conflicts. So if you look through that list, if you can see it, it's got particular matchups which work well. So I think this is a great idea. So if you want to play a game, here's 2 armies which are pretty well matched up, and they can get on with it. So for example, oh, hang on a second. I should get myself a bit stuck here. Yeah, Conflict 5, Hebrew Conquest of the Promised Land. So it's suggesting here you've got 20B Canaanite armies. There's all the options of Canaanite armies. And it gives a bit of historical information about those. And they're matched up then with their early Hebrew army, which makes sense. That would be the battle they fight against. Tells you about the terrain, the history, when they fought each other. And then added on to that, then you've got early Philistines. So everything's grouped together very well. One of the ones I've always wanted to try is the Trojan War, and I painted a Mycenaean army for someone who's seen the pictures in this. And it's fantastic. It's got a sort of history of the Trojan War, and then you've got a Achaean army to try, a Trojan army to try, and just fight matched up armies. So I like the idea of that. Another thing I should have mentioned, it does tell you a little bit about running tournaments as well. And there's the different versions of the game. Big Battle DBA, or DBMM as it's... Sorry, Big Battle DBA is we have larger armies, 36 elements. Again, this is covering the main rule book. And then DBMM is the next game up, which gives you a lot more detail, those flank marches, all that kind of stuff. And I should also mention there's Giant DBA in here, which is the extension of the Big Battle DBA game. So you can have multiplayers on each side, and then each general has 12 elements, and there's ways of doing that. There's only a summary of that in here. I think you can work out the rest of the details yourself. I know in the DBA rules there are quite a few campaign rules as well. There is something on that in here. I remember when I was reading through, there's a bit about that. So I would think this book covers everything, and I'd recommend it. Just popped in a couple more pictures there. That's while I chat about my thoughts on the game. I say 26 years of playtesting and peer review. It's a very thorough game that works. It's well balanced. It's going to give you a good game. The book itself starts in a very chatty and friendly way. I almost felt a little bit patronised the first few pages. I was like, okay. But this book is an introduction, and it does pick up pace. And I have to say, I appreciated that after reading it a little while. It's just a style you have to get into and get used to. And it's a really nicely written book. It's very enjoyable, very helpful. I loved all the bits about making terrain and painting figures. And it does show you with DBA, without spending a lot of money at all, you could buy a couple of boxes of soft plastic 1/72 figures, mount them up on cardboard, cut up a few tiles for terrain. The board is only 2 foot by 2 foot. You're off and running. You're playing a game for £20–30. And that can't be bad, can it? The rules themselves, as anyone knows DBA, they are written in a kind of a legal style. They are designed to be precise. They've got to stand up to tournament play, so there's no wriggle room on them. They're very precise. So I do find the wording of some of those rules quite tricky. I've got an example here I was thinking of earlier, where a single element contacting a single element conforms to it. Okay, single element or group contacting a group conforms to that group. Okay. A single element contacted by a group conforms to it unless it's itself entirely in bad and or rough going, in which case the group conforms. Okay. If conforming to a front edge by contactors is prevented by part element spacing between enemy or physically blocked by elements, terrain or a table edge, contacted elements or groups must either conform or fight as if in full contact and overlapped. Unless to interface a flank or rear contact, contacted elements conform at contact. So things like that, you really have to get your head around. And as recommended in the book, the best way to learn this game is to find a friendly player who already plays it. Don't let that put you off though. I think if two of you, or even myself, prepared to spend a bit of time working through the rules, you will play it and you will enjoy it. There's quite a large army on screen there. So I'm glad I read it. I enjoyed it. The whole book only took me a couple of hours to read. It's quite an easy read. A lot of the content is reference. There's all the lists, the conflicts I mentioned, the full DBA rules. All that obviously would take a lot longer to read. So a quick mention at the end here for John Curry, who's doing wonderful work for the wargaming community. He's got a business there. He's publishing lots of old books, re-editing, contacting writers. Some of the stuff he's putting back together is like the set of rules used by American Navy in like the 1890s and stuff like that. It's awesome. If you get a chance to see him at a wargaming show or something, go and say hello. He's very friendly. He's very chatty. As you can see, he's got a wargaming a website, which I'm very happy to mention there. You can see it on there. There's also the Wargame Research Group.net. Always an interesting place to go. Wargaming.co is John's. There's loads of publications on there. Really interesting. Yes, and as it mentions on this page, there's a lot on solo wargaming. And I would just recommend it. So give it a go. A book I enjoyed reading. And think you should give it a try. If you haven't tried DBA before, this would be the way in. I would highly recommend buying this book rather than just buying the rules. The introductory game and the guide to getting your armies ready is very, very helpful. If you are an experienced player and you've got your armies, then just buy the rules. You probably don't need this book. Alright, hope you enjoyed that. Please put your comments below. I know I'm not an expert on this subject, so fire away, let me know what I got wrong, and I'll catch you on the next one. Please also click like or subscribe. Bye.